Hey everyone, so here's my lesson plan for a 12th grade US government class. The duration of the lesson is planned for 90 minutes. The title of the unit in the lesson is Government Regulations on CAM, or Complementary and Alternative Medicine. My essential literacy focus is to synthesize information from multiple sources to gather information and address a question. The related skill with that is to use the gathered and learned information to draw a conclusion about its effectiveness and controversy, and the content focus is federal government regulations on complementary and alternative medicine. My standards, I have my content standards, my ELA standards, and my ELD standards, which all coincide with the central focus of unit. For my instructional learning objectives, I have 3 of them here. Students will be able to explain the principles that underlie federal regulations of CAM in general. This will be assessed through a formal assessment of the research graphic organizer, as well as an informal assessment through the Jigsaw expert and teaching groups. Students will also be able to identify the benefits and drawbacks of the 5 controversial examples of CAM through the same assessments with the graphic organizer and the Jigsaw groups. And finally, students will be able to evaluate the government's attempt to regulate these 5 practices, and this will be assessed through the writing assignment, which is a formal assessment, as well as their exit ticket for the day. Their language function is to explain, identify, and evaluate, which is also the same verbs on my objectives. And for my additional language demands, I have my vocabulary here, complementary and alternative medicine, or CAM, the FDA, ephedra or mahuang, hypnotherapy, medical marijuana, chiropractic, and acupuncture. For my discourse, I have pair shares, small group discussion, informational poster, and argumentative paragraph. Here are my resources and materials. Students should already be familiar with the 5 categories of CAM from their homework assignment, which I'll explain in a second. And students may also have prior knowledge about who the FDA are and some of their key roles and responsibilities in the federal government. All right, so for homework, students have already briefly explored the 5 categories of CAM through the resources listed on the 5 types of CAM bibliography. And students were also assigned to explore one of the controversial examples listed on the bibliography in more depth. So to start off the lesson, students will partner up with their desk partner with one person standing, one person sitting. The person standing will have 1 minute to share a brief description of what they learned about their CAM practice, as well as one surprising fact that they have learned from their research. After the minute is up, we'll repeat the process with the other partner. And after both partners have shared, I will call in a few random students with the equity cards to share what they and their partner have discussed during the pair share. So for my focused instruction, I'm going to model the activity that they're going to be doing. First, I'll pass out the CAM Research Graphic Organizer, and I'll explain to the students that today they'll be working in their expert groups to research further about their CAM practice. And as a class, we're going to fill out the first row of the graphic organizer together. So I'll project the blank graphic organizer onto the screen. And then we will go through the resources on the bibliography, find the information, and then fill the graphic organizer out together. And since the students have already explored these websites on their homework, so if anybody can recall the information, they can obviously participate and help the teacher fill out the graphic organizer. But essentially in this section, I'm modeling how they would do their research portion, which is the next part of their activity. And because I am modeling how the students should fill out the graphic organizer and how they would go about finding that information, this activity is a scaffolding in itself. And by projecting the research process and the graphic organizer on the screen, students are receiving visual cues of the instruction rather than just verbal instruction. And I'll also keep this projected up onto the screen through the next activity so students can refer back to it. If they need more time to fill it out, then they obviously have that opportunity. All right, so in the guided instruction and practice, Students will get into their expert groups, and they will be exploring the sources given on their CAM bibliography. So they'll have about 20 minutes to fill out the the entire column of their graphic organizer and find different information about their CAM practice. After most of the groups are about done filling out the graphic organizer, I'm going to pass out a poster paper and some markers, and they're going to make an informational poster about their CAM practice. So the information will mostly be the same from the graphic organizer, but I want them to create a visual representation of what they have learned. And then we'll do a quick presentation where each group member will participate, but it should be a pretty low-key 3 to 5 minute presentation. After the presentation, students will get into their teaching groups, so that will contain at least one member from each expert group. So now each expert will get to teach the other group members about the nature and controversy of their practice. They can refer to both their graphic organizer and the poster that will be displayed around the classroom so that students can take a look at it. And so the students will fill out the rest of the graphic organizer with the information shared by their group members. For this portion, students will be placed in heterogeneous groups, so struggling students will have the opportunity to work with others who can help guide them through the group research. And creating the poster provides visual cues for information being verbally discussed and written down. Also, I do have a few students, which is on my Context for Learning form, with some visual problems and some attention problems. So students will have the option to sit in front of the classroom during the poster presentations for, again, those with attention deficit or problems with visual processing. And of course, I will be walking around the classroom during both of the group activities, and I will be spending extra time with groups with struggling students and students with learning needs. And finally, for my independent practice, this will be when the students write the paragraph response, which is also their exit ticket. Students will have the rest of the class to write a one-paragraph response to the following prompt. Choose one type of CAM that we explored today. Evaluate whether it is over or under-regulated and why. The response must cite at least 2 facts from a reputable source, or any source that they can find on their bibliography, regarding the efficacy, safety, or cost of the CAM practice or the practicality of the federal regulation. So students with IEPs may take their paragraph response home to finish if they did not have enough time to finish in class. This also does give them some autonomy on what CAM practice that they choose to write about. So even though they were assigned a practice for them to research at home and during the group activity, if they find that another practice was more interesting to them, they can absolutely write about that for their paragraph response instead. So now they get to explore the practice that they are most interested in. And of course, for the closure, we'll have a few student volunteers share out their response if we have time in class. And finally, I'll go ahead and collect the response and graphic organizer as an exit ticket.